Well, as you can see in that last clip, we're heading to Mount Monadnock, New Hampshire here today. I took that short clip there on the way over here where I knew I could get a view of the mountain. And we are going to be exploring some of the lesser known trails, or at least lesser traveled trails, on the south and southeast and southwest sides of Mount Monadnock today. There's a lot of trails on this mountain and only a few that get the really large amounts of people. The direct routes to the summit get really busy some days. And I've been up here on a weekend with clear weather like this and seen hardly anybody on the other trails. So 2022 I did a few of them. I'm back to do the ones I didn't do on this side of the mountain and see what there is to see. Because there is a lot to see on this mountain besides the view from the top. We've got all kinds of rock formations and little bogs and all kinds of interesting plants I found here 2 years ago. We'll be looking for those. Spring has sprung on the bottom of the mountain here at a 1,500 foot elevation. As you look up the mountain today, it still looks quite brown at the summit. So we'll be walking back into early spring as we go up in elevation today. The summit's almost 3,200 feet. So there's a big difference in the weather as you climb, especially at either end of the summer, the fall, or the spring. You can see big differences in the trail conditions and snow and rain and leaf out. So let's go explore some of the lesser known trails in Mount Monadnock, New Hampshire. And one of the hardier trees I think we can find right up to the I'm going to call it a tree line. It's not really a tree line on this mountain, but one that'll grow all the way up to where the trees end is our red maple. We'll see if it's got some leaves up there. I don't think it would. These are fully leafed out here. The leaves are still growing, but they're close to their full size. And we'll see if any of the red maples up on top are still in flower. And we've come up a few hundred feet in elevation on the old toll road. There's a trail that runs parallel to this, but I've taken this the last couple times just to get me to the more interesting trails quicker. So we came up the old toll road, not even a half a mile, and we're going to get on the Parker Trail. I did a tree steady up here in 2022, and I took this trail, the Parker Trail, to the Cliff Walk. But I wasn't on the Cliff Walk very long, and then I got on some other trails. So today I'm going to stay on the Cliff Walk and get to some labeled rock formations on the map that might be interesting. And then there's a bunch of other little trails that weave their way mostly around the south and southeast face of this mountain. So we'll see what we can see on the way up. The top is spectacular. I don't need to make that the main goal today. I want to see what there is on the way up on these lesser known trails. And we'll take a look at the view from the top when we get there. And while we're on the subject of maples, just down the trail from that red maple, we've got some striped maple. Got more information on that on my Barking Up the Right Tree channel, but the bark does have stripes on it, as you can see here. Hence the name. Let's just look at the flowers because they're in bloom. They look different than the red maple or the sugar maple flowers. I don't know if we'll find any mountain maple flowers today, but we'll keep an eye out for them. But I know there's mountain maple on this mountain because I recorded it 2 years ago. So our striped maple leaves are usually quite large. These are almost full grown. They're usually as big as your hand at least. And the flowers are usually under the leaves here, trying to stay out of the sun, maybe out of the rain. And here's one I've got exposed to the sun so we can see it a little better. Right there. So it's a whole strand of flowers, a string 3 or 4 inches long with multiple flowers that are almost like bell-shaped. So quite pretty. And we're about a half a mile up the cliff trail. We did have to go up a wooden ladder up a cliff. So you definitely need your hands for this hike. If you bring trekking poles, be prepared at times to put them on your pack or collapse them at least and secure them to your pack. You do need your hands on part of this hike. The part I did last time, I needed my hands, especially on the descent. So some beautiful red spruce all over the middle slopes of this mountain. Red spruce is pretty common at this elevation in New Hampshire. And the reason there's no trees on the top of this mountain isn't because it's too cold like it would be up in the White Mountains, especially around Mount Washington and the Mount Lafayette area. But it's because of the land use history. And sheep farms were common a couple hundred years ago. The land is really too rocky to do much else with, but it's good for grazing sheep. Problem was the sheep farms were on the bottom of the mountain and the wolves were living up here. So the farmers at the time set fire to the mountain on several occasions to try to eradicate the wolves. And they were successful at that, but the mountain burned so severely that the forest never regrew on the top quarter of the mountain. The top 300 or 400 feet in elevation are bare rock with just some patches of vegetation in the crevices and cracks and depressions between the ledges. Well, that makes for great views, and that would explain the popularity of this mountain. Also close proximity to Boston and other large population centers. But plenty of spruce in the mid slopes here, at least on this half of the mountain. And you know what? It's starting to feel a little bit like summer now. I'm kind of glad to be in the shade of these spruce trees. All right, we're still on the cliff trail here, living up to its name. And we can start to see the view to the south. And this mountain is called Mount Monadnock. Monadnock is a geographical or geological term for a mountain that stands by itself. And it does. It's pretty much just rolling plains around here, about 1,000 feet, maybe 1,500 feet in elevation. And this mountain sticks up all by itself, about 2,000 feet higher than the surrounding lowlands. Another geological Monadnock that we can see from here if we're looking south is Wachusett Mountain. And there it is right there, about 25-30 miles south of here. And the cliff trail was up on that knob a few minutes ago. We've come down in just a little lower area here. You could easily miss this sign for the Hello Rock Trail. That's what I took last time and headed over to the Monte Rosa area, which was quite interesting. So we are going to stay on the cliff trail, cliff walk trail I should say, which heads in this direction. So at this point, this is all new to me. Map published by the Appalachian Mountain Club has many named landmarks along this trail and ones that are near it. So let's see which ones we can find. We had several people at Point Surprise there, so I didn't get too close to the view, but there'll be more views to be had. It's pretty much the view we just got a few minutes ago. So we'll continue on the cliff walk trail right here. And that bears right. Point Surprise Trail is the left-hand fork. These are all worthwhile. I'm just going to try to stay with the cliff trail for now, cliff walk trail, and we'll get out the map and trace our course as the day goes on. And plenty of red spruce keeping us out of the sun. Boy, it sometimes goes from days in the 50s to days in the 80s this time of year, and this week is supposed to be that way. The high on the mountain today was supposed to be 70 at the top, 78 at the bottom. But after quite a few weeks of cool weather, 70s feels hot to me. I'm thankful for these spruce trees where we have them. Eventually it's going to be full sun at the summit, so there's a nice breeze today. It's keeping the black flies away. They haven't been biting, but they are swarming a little bit. So this is the same view we just passed over at Point Surprise, and nobody else here. So we're looking east towards, I think, Monadnock. I've been on North Monadnock, which I think is the peak on your left there, about 2 years ago in April of 2022. That had some nice views looking this way and towards Boston, and pretty much all directions except straight north. And again, rolling hills between here and there. And look how green that is. There's nothing more green than when the leaves first come out. And as you go from the bottom of the mountain towards these mid slopes, it gets more of a brownish color, mostly because the oak trees are not in leaf up here, but only have their catkins. And it's mostly just red oak. That's all I've seen so far. As you ascend here, and a lot of red spruce as well. And plenty of blueberries up here. They're in flower right now. So, probably by July, this will have plenty of low bush blueberry. And about 180-degree view, looking south, southwest, and southeast right now. Plenty of small lakes around here. There's our blueberry flowers. They look just like little bells hanging down. And occasional sea marks on the rocks for cliff trail, and these reflective diamonds. I assume they look reflective. Came up here with a headlamp, you'd probably find out for sure. I'm sure people do hike this trail to get the sunrise, and the other trails here as well. So we're still on the cliff trail. There's Thoreau's seat, Emerson's seat, and Ainsworth's seat on the map here. Let's see if we can actually find them. And the paint had wore off the rock to label that last viewpoint, but I'm just doing some navigating here. We're at the junction of the Lost Farm Trail, which comes up from the east side of the mountain, and the cliff walk. And we just passed Ainsworth's seat. That was that last view. And just to my left here, I'm going to bear left on the cliff trail, is Thoreau's seat. And then if we bear right, we'll get to Emerson's seat. And yes, I think several of those poets came up here. I'm pretty sure Thoreau did a lot of hiking in his time. And I'm not familiar with whether Emerson did or not, or Ainsworth. And a short rock scramble up from the junction of the Lost Farm Trail, and we're still on the cliff trail here. We do have a sign for Thoreau's seat. right there. All these have great views. This is actually a little less of a view because the spruce trees have grown up, but still a nice view. And just a few hundred yards uphill from Thoreau's seat, according to my navigation on the map, this is Emerson's seat. I don't see a sign, but it's in the right location. And a similar view. I think we can see the summit from here if we turn around, or towards the summit. And those are the upper slopes, but not the summit. Boy, and the views are getting more expansive because these spruce trees are getting shorter. And we just passed the Dewdrop Trail. I didn't record that intersection, but it's labeled. And the Noble Trail is here, and there's a trail going this way, and the sign for it is on the rock just a few feet from the junction. That goes back down in elevation. So I'm going to stay on the trails that keep going up, but this does look interesting. We'll go down just a short distance. Again, most of these trails don't look very heavily traveled. They're not heavily eroded. So I can tell you on a busy day, some of the spots on these main trails that hundreds of people use get so busy you have to wait your turn to get through the parts that require scrambling. So give these other trails a try. You may actually make better time and have a little more solitude. I've seen 3 hikers today, which is 3 more than I saw last time on similar type trails. But it is a very nice day, and the first nice day we've had in a while. So we'll continue on the cliff trail here. A place called Bald Rock, I think it is, coming up soon. And we'll be deciding when we get there which way we want to go to the summit. Okay, I think we're coming up to what's called Bald Rock here. And we got a view of the summit. And yes, this is one of the most popular mountains in the world for climbing, and the most popular in New England many times over. So most people park on the east side of the mountain, not the south side where I parked. There's not that much parking on the south side, maybe room for 50 cars. So that limits the number of people on those trails. And there's a lot of them you can take coming from the south. You can choose several different routes. So I don't know if this is Bald Rock, but it's showing up about where it should be. And it certainly is bald. And if it's labeled, I'll see. I haven't seen a sign yet made of wood or painted. But so that is the summit. A few minutes ago you could see a whole bunch of people up there. I think they've all kept moving out of my field of view. So let's take a look here. There's a little bit of a cloud over the top right now, casting a shadow over those people. We'll get another view in a few minutes when the cloud is no longer there. But I have found some of the most interesting views on this mountain are on the way up, not always at the top. Especially on days that are getting a little hazy like today, where the longer views aren't really available. We can see maybe 30-40 miles right now. The haze is building as we speak. Okay, well, after eating lunch here at Bald Rock, we're going to go on this Smith Connection Trail, I think it's called. And I think I'm going to opt for looping around the south half of this mountain on some side trails for the next few hours. I need to be off the mountain back to the car at 5, and I don't want to have to rush my way back down through these rock scrambles. It's pretty slow going down the downsloping part of this south side the summit, I know from last time I was here. So I think I'm going to opt to explore the amphitheater and a few other points of interest on the part of the mountain we can see right here, without trying to get to the top with only 3 hours and 15 minutes left. I can get down in 2 hours, but I like to take my time. So we'll stay on this trail a little bit longer. Then we're going to start cutting over this way. And I know from hiking that part of the mountain, it's quite interesting without actually reaching the summit. And we're about 2,600 feet elevation here. And we looked at that red maple about 1,000 feet lower than here. And I thought we'd do a comparison, because it definitely looked like there was less leaf out at the summit of this mountain. Of course, there aren't many trees on the summit either, but this has been mostly red spruce up here, but there are a few other hardwood trees, including plenty of birch. And this red maple, the leaves are only about half grown. They're still reddish as they emerge. And the flowers just finished being flowers, and the little helicopter seeds that develop from those flowers are starting to form, but they're not full grown yet. Okay, well, I think the sun is now illuminating the summit again, and we are getting closer. So views pretty much along this entire Cliff Walk and Smith Connection Trail, and towards the summit, the last half mile or so, you can see towards the summit as well, to the south, southeast, and southwest. So very enjoyable hike here. Plenty to look at. Footing is moderate by New England standards, but you do need your hands occasionally. And on the down slopes, those that aren't natural mountain goats may need to slide on their posterior to keep themselves from tumbling. Alrighty, we've come to the Amphitheater Trail. Got this shrub in the foreground here that gets beautiful berries in the midsummer. I was here in August 2 years ago, and this mountain holly was covered in beautiful berries. They had long stems and looked like an apple, but they were only the size of a blueberry and bright red. So if you come here in the midsummer, it's pretty much everywhere, except underneath the spruce trees where there's no sun. It's very common plants up here. And here's where our junction is. So we're going to head over the Amphitheater Trail. There's a place called Black Precipice in the Tooth I'd like to go check out. And at that point, we'll look at the time and see if we can continue any further without turning back and looping around back towards the south entrance, which is called the old toll road access, I believe. We'll get the map out one final time and really trace our course when we are done today. Yes, this Amphitheater trail is quite scenic. It's got all kinds of rock outcrops. If you like photography, anytime you can get a rock like this with a nice crisp shadow and the evergreens and the blue sky for contrast, you're in a good place. So plenty to see along here. That's why I opted to stay off the summit and just really see what there is to see on these cross trails. Because I have seen the summit, and the summit's worth seeing. I'm trying to see what else there is to see on this mountain today, and things that most of the masses would never see. And just a few minutes down the Amphitheater trail, you intersect with the Sidefoot trail, which to my left would go back down the mountain, but I want to stay on this elevation, maybe go a little higher for a while longer. So here we go. No lack of rocks up here. And plenty of open ledge. I would not consider this hike, even if there was a slight chance of thunderstorms, because of the openness of this mountain. You don't want to be up here when the weather gets rough. Rain is one thing, fog is one thing, but electricity is a whole different game. So no chance of anything today except some low clouds this morning, which burned off as predicted. Well, this Amphitheater trail has plenty of views, and it's definitely the path least traveled. Not much signs of erosion at all from foot traffic, and it is blazed, but mostly on the rocks. So in the snow, if nobody else had taken it, it might be hard to figure out where the trail is, but usually it's just a little bit more open than the surrounding woodlands. There's very few blazes on the trees on a lot of these trails. So if there was a chance of snow while you're up here and it covered the trail real quickly, you might have a little trouble finding it, especially if nobody was ahead of you to leave footprints in the snow. That being said, these are beautiful trails. They're all worth seeing. And I think we've come to what's called Black Precipice, which is showing up on the Appalachian Mountain Club map as a point of interest. It appears to be a wide open ledge here. I'll try to name some peaks here. I'll put the names in above them when I edit the video in a few days here. But, the haze is building today, but you can still see quite a distance. It's not extremely hazy. We're looking due west, west-northwest. And the southern Green Mountains come into view. Just to the right of the screen there, where the mountains kind of disappear into the spruce trees, that's Stratton Mountain. The Appalachian Trail goes over that mountain. South of that is called Haystack Mountain and Mount Pisgah, which is also where Mount Snow ski area would be. One of these peaks is Greylock, and I think the haze is making it a little hard to tell, but I think it's right in here. That right there. And then we're heading down the Pioneer Valley of Massachusetts and the hills on either side. think one of these knobs closer to here is Mount Grace. Right there, that's in Massachusetts. And then Gap Mountain is right in front of us here. It has some trails in it. It's under a cloud right now. It's in the shadow of a cloud. And then Mount Tom is not that high, but it sure sticks up above the whole area around Holyoke, Massachusetts. So it is a landmark to be seen from a lot of places. And I got this to 10x zoom. That's as far as we can go. And it's right in the center of the screen there. And then panning around, we're kind of looking down towards Quabbin Reservoir here, and not a lot of towns in that area, and not a lot of peaks that are noteworthy because it's kind of a level area with valleys. It's a dissected plateau more than mountains. Down in Connecticut, there's some hills I can see, and I don't know them from here, but probably the area around Summers there is in the haze. And then finally back around here is our lunch spot right there, and then Wachusett behind that. And we followed that Amphitheater trail to the Smith Summit Trail. We're coming down Smith Summit Trail. I did part of this trail 2 years ago on the way up only, recording trees of Mount Monadnock, which is on my other channel. And this is not a tree, and I'm not in this particular habitat, you know, the northern habitat, often enough to learn all these plants, because, you know, if they're not in bloom, they don't always stand out. But this sure is starting to open up here, and I've seen several today that are starting to open, but just starting. And those flowers kind of look like they're in a bunch like an azalea, but I don't know for sure what it is. I'm going to do plant.net in a little while here and see if I can get an answer to put on this edit when this video is edited. But it's all over this mountainside. I'm sure in a few more days this would be really pretty. And plenty more of these pink flowers, and boy, they sure resemble the structure of an azalea. The plant is a lot smaller than the pink azaleas you see further south. So if this is a pink azalea, it's not the pink azalea that many of us know. Good reason to revisit areas more than one time a year, you know. And spring is always a great time of year. Well, I mentioned that spring was making its way up the mountain, and here's some evidence right here. Right ahead here, there's a plant that was in bloom down in the lowlands 2 or 3 weeks ago, mid to late April. And even at the lower ledges on today's hike, the flowers were all spent and the berries were starting to form on this service berry. But we're up at 2,600 feet here, and there's probably a calculation as to how many weeks behind this blooming schedule is per 100 or 1,000 feet in elevation gain. And I'm sure on a mountain that's 3,000 feet high, it's several weeks. So our service berry is still in bloom here, in full bloom. And the ones further down the trail at maybe 1,800 feet were long gone. And this is one of the prettiest trees in the Appalachian Mountains. And there's several different species. I worked on it last year on my other channel. The channel's called Barking Up the Right Tree. And the video set was serviceberry flowers and bark. And it's a long title, but it's on there. And the little photo, the photo that introduces it looks just like this. So if you look for a photo like this on that channel, you will find that video. It's about a half hour long. I took it in winter, early spring, and early summer to see how they changed. But if this is any indication, the smooth leaf that's rusty colored, I think we have what's called Allegheny serviceberry. But they are hard to tell apart, and you don't need to enjoy them. They grow in any kind of open habitat where there's some sun. Areas that consistently have sun, you will find serviceberry on many, many mountains. And more things in flower along this Smith Summit Trail. There's lots of boggy areas here with full sun, so that's a recipe for a large variety of plants, when on the other trails it was mostly red spruce with a little bit of some birches and a little bit of sheep laurel. Boy, now this guy is in full bloom, the one we've been studying for the last few minutes. And that sure is something. And a grass that grows in wetlands, boggy areas as you go further north in New England. It's called cotton grass. I think that's what this is right here. So it's a little bit of cotton on the end of these stalks here. Right there. I was here in August and it still had the cotton on the end. I don't know if that was the same species, if there's another species, but quite interesting. And some more of this cotton grass over here, what I think is cotton grass, with this purple flower starting to come out right next to it. Okay, coming south on the Smith Summit Trail, which I really like this trail. Nobody's using it. The footing isn't too bad. I took it last time, and on the way up only. I just came down it. It's really not that hard. And this is the tooth that's showing up on the AMC map. I didn't notice it last time. So take trails going different times of the year and different directions. You see things you wouldn't see because of the change in seasons, and also because of the different ways you're facing. So you can definitely see how this looks like a tooth. Sticking right up, and there we are. Plenty of open ledges to explore off the Smith Summit Trail. So kind of a wonderland of flowers and ledges and views, and some gnarly looking white pines growing in these crevices. They can't really grow up, so they grow out instead. And a pretty good view of the top. Well, if you're looking for a navigational challenge, and if you study the map, I'm using the Appalachian Mountain Club map. I think that's probably more accurate and a larger map than the one that the park gives you. But either way, I haven't been using all trails at all today. To find this great pasture trail, I just had to go in the direction from the top of Monte Rosa, which is a known point with a sign. I had to go in the direction I thought I should go across these open ledges. I started seeing a few rock cairns, but no blazes whatsoever on trees or the rocks, and this old sign that you really can't even read. So this is one of the most visited parks in the country as far as number of hikers goes, and there's places where you're really on your own. So you know, if you stay on the main trails, you'll be fine. You can usually see somebody on a busy day, and the main trails have blazing quite often, but these side trails are an adventure. So if you're looking for an adventure, you're looking to challenge yourself and to get a little bit more solitude, try these other trails. They're here. This one looks like it's pretty easy to follow. It just wasn't marked, or the sign is missing or weathered away like that last one. But that sign right there was a quarter mile from the actual trail junction. So we're going to head down this to the cart path, Great pasture to Meadow Brook, I think it is. Mossy Brook, and then cart path back to the access road that comes up from Route 120, from Route 12, 124 or 12. I'll get the map out when we're done. And we'll continue on this trail. It goes down just a little further and then loops around along a brook. That'll feel good on a day this warm. Can dunk my hat and then just start heading out. And once the Great Pasture Trail got into the spruce trees here, it was blazed. So it was just the top third that was, it really wasn't possible to tell where the trail was at the junction of the Smith Summit Trail. But they got a new sign at the bottom here where it intersects the Marion Trail and the Mossy Brook Trail. And we're going to loop around on the Mossy Brook Trail. Brook's running a little low right now. I don't know if there'll be a place where I can dunk my hat in or not, but it's just a moist rocks right here right now. There's no water at the surface. So there's the Marion Trail. That comes in from the Marlboro Trail, I believe. Across from the Marlboro Trail. And then the Mossy Brook Trail here continues on. And it's going to intersect what's called the cart path. So this is all new to me. Ever since I left the Smith Summit Trail, I'm back on new trails. And most of what I did today was on trails I had never done. And saw a few people, but not too many. I think maybe 10 total. So other people are exploring these trails as well. Boy, while we're at it, let's take a look at a nice mid-spring wildflower shrub here. I'm looking all day for this, but when a mountain gets burned over and the woods get destroyed, you lose the witch hobble, and it doesn't always come back right away. But maybe along this brook, it persisted despite the fires. So witch hobble is a viburnum. It's a shrub. Gets beautiful berries in the late summer. So this cluster of flowers will all turn into beautiful black and blue and red berries and persist until the fall, and the foliage gets a crimson color that's just amazing. I recorded that in the Adirondacks a couple years ago at several different parks. I think the one where I did it the most, I was exploring the waterfalls along the river there that I can't remember. But anyways, it's on there. I'll put the title of that video on this video when I edit it. So yes, witch hobble. Pretty common in some woods, but I haven't seen hardly any today, and this is the first one I've seen that was in flower. And a peaceful green walk along Mossy Brook, and it definitely is plenty of moss, and it got enough water in it for me to dunk my hat as I went down further, collected a little bit more water. And now we're going to get on what's called cart path. It'll bring us back to the access road. It goes down, it's the old toll road basically. I find it quicker to get out that way. I could take the path that runs next to it, but that's more rocks and more roots. So depending on what time it is, we'll probably just take the quickest way out. But this loop I did today was very pleasant. All kinds of stuff to see. And I could have made it to the summit, but I would have been under a little time pressure. I wouldn't have had time to stop and really see the neat stuff that came along, like those purple flowers and all the different views that I wasn't expecting. So I'd rather bite off less and chew more, if you know what I'm talking about, on these hikes, and show paths that a lot of people haven't shown. So that's the nature of this channel. I try to go to less visited places, even if it's at a park that gets a lot of visitors. We're on the less visited part of the park. So we will continue these adventures. I got a few planned in mid-June. I'm going to try to get up to the White Mountains or somewhere in that area, depending on what campsites are available that weekend, for 3.5 to 4 days. So we might do waterfalls. We might go up in elevation a little bit. I might go up in elevation a lot if the weather permits. I'm always looking for interesting places to put on this channel. So stay tuned in June and early July. There should be more coming. Okay, let's do a quick wrap up of what we did a couple days ago. I got back to the car. It was a little hot and I needed to get moving, so I didn't try to do this on the trailhead as to what we did that day, but I have added up the mileage as best I could. It was on May 20th. I'm guessing about 5.1 miles. I'm getting the information from All Trails where it's available on the distance of each segment of this hike, but some of them I had to scale off with the map scale. Say about a 5-mile hike, 1,500 foot total climb. It was mostly up to the highest point and mostly down. There wasn't a lot of duplicate, so I'm guessing about a 1,500 foot climb. It was about a 1,300 foot climb to the highest point with maybe a couple hundred feet of climbing the same hill twice. I got the map from the state parks in front of me. This one's a little hard to navigate these side trails on. They're so small on the map. But I did trace my course, and I did it this way, counterclockwise, and then came back the same section of the old toll road. Parking at the south for about 50 cars. That limits the number of people you're going to find on these trails coming up from the south, because there is no other parking in that area. They'll tow you away if you try to park on the road. On Route 124, there's a lot more parking at the east end of the park, and the trails going to the summit, the White Cross and White Dot trails, are much busier for that reason. So this Appalachian Mountain Club map is from the 90s, but it's still accurate. Most of these trails haven't changed. This park's been a park for a long time. I've got it, little green dots as to the path I took that day. So it was basically the old toll road, which is easy walking but uphill, and then Parker Trail to Cliff Walk Trail, past Hello Rock, past What Cheer Point, past Ainsworth, Emerson's, and Thoreau's seats, all the way up to Bald Rock. That was all on the Cliff Walk Trail once I left the Parker Trail. Got on the Smith connecting link to the Amphitheater Trail, all the way over to Monte Rosa area and back down the Great Pasture Trail. The area around Smith Summit Trail was where all those flowering shrubs were. That was really neat, but they were in other places too. Great Pasture Trail, you might be able to find it, but there's no indication that I could see that it was there, but I knew from the map it should be there, and I started basically just walking down some open ledges and eventually found the rock cairns and some blazes. So, and then Mossy Brook Trail right back to Cart Path to the old toll road back down to the south entrance. Moderate footing, need your hands in places. And I did about a mile an hour because I was stopping to video a lot. And also because I like to take my time on the rocky sections. So it was about a 5-mile hike. I did it in about 6 hours with some rest time in between. So I don't try to do more than a mile an hour on really rocky terrain, especially if it's steep. Usually I can do a little bit more, but if I'm making videos, I usually don't try. So for trip planning, I keep that in mind. We're going to keep exploring these areas as the spring and summer continues.